We're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order because it is, according to the iPhone, about 18:01 or 2. And with that, I think I will call to order the City of Santa Barbara Airport Commission meeting for December 19th, 2018. And we begin with the roll call.
Karen Kahn,
Present.
Kirk Martin, Craig Arcuri, Carl Hopkins.
Here.
Bruce Miller.
Here.
Jim Wilson.
Here.
Paul Bowen.
Present.
Okay, and notices that on Thursday, December 13th, it's 5 p.m., the Airport Commission Secretary duly posted this agenda on the bulletin board at Airport Administration. Are there any changes?
No changes, Chair.
Thank you. And that brings us to public comment. Any member of the public may address the Airport Commission on any subject within the jurisdiction of the Commission, which is not scheduled before them that same day. Total amount of time will be 15 minutes, and no individual speaker may speak for more than 2 minutes. Do we have any speaker slips?
We have speaker slips, but they're all related to the agendized item.
Okay, then we will move on to liaison reports. Do I see our liaison from the City Council, Jason Dominguez? I don't. City of Goleta liaison, Councilmember Michael T. Bennett? I don't. Okay. That moves us on.
And Madam Chair, if I could interrupt you for one moment, we just received an item related to the consent item 5.
Item 5, the lease agreement with ACI Jet.
That is accurate. A request to speak.
Okay, and that,
Let's separate it.
I think we would want to then, we'll separate that, we'll remove that from the consent calendar.
I so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
We have agreed to the removal of the ACI lease agreement from the consent calendar, which leaves us on the consent calendar, both the minutes being approved and the property management report. Do I hear a motion regarding the consent calendar?
I so move.
Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Okay, the consent calendar is dispensed with, and that would then bring us to the lease agreement as a separate item, which we could now consider, which is a recommendation that the Commission approve and authorize the airport director to execute a 2-year lease agreement plus 3 automatic 1-year options to extend with ACI Jet, a California corporation, for 2,300 square feet of combined office warehouse space in Building 2, Suite A at 6100 Hollister at the Santa Barbara Airport, effective on or before May 1st, 2019, for a monthly rate of $39.80. $36.80, exclusive of utilities and CAM charges. The automatic options are predicated on lessee's compliance with all lease terms.
And with that, we have Joe Daché with ACI Jet who would love
Okay.
to speak.
Thank you. Good evening. Madam Chair, Airport Commissioners, Director Kelly and team, my name is Joe Dacian. I'm Senior Vice President with ACI Jet. First and foremost, I'm a passionate aviator. I have 2,300 hours of flying all over the country, piston to jet aircraft. I'm also a licensed commercial real estate broker with the California Department of Real Estate. And I'm joined here today with a couple team members with ACI Jet. Mariah, who works in hospitality and experience, and Maribel, who works with the valet team with ACI Jet. So a fun fact I learned about Santa Barbara Airport is Gordon Sackett and Roy Stetson landed a Hisso-powered airplane in a cow pasture near the corner of Hollister and Fairview. And what's so phenomenal about that is the moment which triggered the first flight school and which triggered the airport in 1928. It marked the beginning. And the thing about airports or airplanes are exciting, but airports are just as exciting. And the reason is they provide so much benefit to a community. There's challenges with airports like any land use planning and any type of infrastructure project, but the neat thing about an airport is it makes people travel, it makes packages travel, it adds industry and jobs and does so many positive things. So I'm grateful to be here today to talk about 6100 Hollister. I'm experiencing over $300 million of real estate transactions. I was going to say it's going to be in the hundreds, but I think it actually crossed into the 1,000 now of these deals. And one of the things that's so exciting about Hollister is, even though it has its challenges, when I first saw it, instinctually, it was right. The project was planned right. I compliment all the effort and the time and the work that's gone into that project. And even though there's the challenge of leasing and there hasn't been that first moment of getting a tenant, sometimes the only thing that stops a business wave is that inertia. So I'm pleased to be able to have ACI Jet be that first tenant to prime the pump and get it going. Working with Tracy and Deanna has been outstanding. It's great to work with the staff. And again, I've lived in the trenches of this leasing world. I know what it's like. It gets very, very hard in certain seasons. Some real quick fun fact about ACI Jet: Central Coast Business Journal has awarded us the fastest aviation growing company multiple times. And as far as Hollister is concerned, I just want to share my enthusiasm that while we're in Oceano, we're in Paso Robles, our corporate headquarters is in San Luis Obispo, we have a sales office in Montecito, and with your approval tonight, I'm excited to add Santa Barbara. I'm available for any questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions?
What will ACI actually be doing here?
Yeah, so there's a couple things that are underway. Each office and each FBO and location are very, very different. They cater to the local needs that are going on. The question was asked to me actually earlier about the Montecito. Will that go away? Montecito is very focused on the retail sales of charter. Our fleet mix has been changing, and our presence on the surrounding fields in the Central Coast has increased. So we're hoping to take a look at the maintenance operations and the charter operations and support what's already going on. An important thing is we don't want to displace someone. We want to complement and add to it. We're about maximizing people, maximizing communities, maximizing airports. So,
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
I
So,
would make a motion that the commission approve the lease as presented.
any discussion?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And that brings us to item 6, the Santa Barbara Airport Noise Abatement Program, and the recommendation that the commission receive the monthly Airport Noise Abatement Program report.
So yes, Commission, I've asked Kelly Reed, our operations manager, if she could just give a quick update on the noise abatement activities that have taken place.
Good evening, Commissioners. I just wanted to give you a brief update and let you know a little bit of what we've been working on and one of the changes, the positive changes that that we're happy to announce. We have been meeting with, we have started meetings with Santa Barbara Airport air traffic control staff to work through any areas where education might not be getting to pilots or controllers, and really try and look big picture at the whole noise abatement program and identify potential weaknesses in areas where we can provide more education. So we'll have more to come on that once we have some more meetings. We have asked some of the commissioners to be part of that as well. Alaska Airlines began using a new RNP approach. It's a required navigation performance approach to runway 25. This started on November 26th. We did work with Alaska in implementing this or in developing it. They reached out to the airport a little over a year ago to develop this approach that does encompass our noise abatement approach as part of it. However, we were hesitant to publicize this until it became effective. So effective November 26th, they have been flying that. The pilots are reporting success, that they're having ease of flying it and no issues on their end so far. So we're anxious and excited to see how that goes with the community. I will mention that prior to that RNP approach starting on November 26th, we had 11 noise abatement complaints for Alaska in November. After that, we've had 1. So we do see so far a positive trend. And that really kind of summarizes where we're at right now. We're looking forward to, in the new year, getting together with air traffic control more and making some more progress on that front.
Could you just kind of summarize or give us an overview of how the new approach procedure has changed from the old one?
So the the most common approach, or the approach to runway 25, and I'm specifically speaking to runway 25. Runway 7 is an instrument approach. It's a precision approach, so we do not have noise abatement on the approach side of runway 7. For runway 25, it's a GPS VOR approach that is FAA published. I should mention that the Alaska approach is proprietary to Alaska, so that means that it's only available for their aircraft use. The other airlines and other jets don't have this information. It's not public. It's not an FAA approach. It's an airline created and tested and flight tracked approach. So the GPS VOR approach is offset from this approach a little bit. I don't have a visual of it now, but we'll be looking at that, adding that in the future for you guys. It essentially keeps the aircraft over the ocean and then joining in to our noise abatement approach over the Moore Mesa open space, and then continuing on that diagonal to about 2.5 miles out to join very short final of runway 25.
So fundamentally, the intent there is to really keep the traffic away from the Hope Ranch.
The intent is to keep the traffic over the water as long as possible, and then aim for that Moore Mesa open space as we have laid out in our noise abatement approach. It is important to understand that these aircraft, the air carrier aircraft, are coming in anywhere between 125, 150 miles an hour, and it takes them about 1.5 minutes or less to go from that point where they head over land to touching down on the runway. So you're talking about a very short amount of time that they're attempting to line up with what is essentially a non-precision approach.
Can I ask also, last month you mentioned some upgrades to the noise monitoring system from profiling software. Has there been any change in that?
We're waiting to get that contract back from our legal department so that we can move forward with that. We are hopeful to get it as soon as possible.
I will also add the point that Alaska flies the biggest, heaviest airplanes in here that we have. And consequently, having this from them is a great boon to one recognizing that their airplanes can be a problem, although they are new generation quiet. But because they're heavier and they carry more people, and the much higher load, I think they carry, 145, 150 people total. It's a service we want, but we want it if they're good neighbors. And so I think them voluntarily putting together something that allows them to keep a tighter rein on where people go. And I suspect it will be used not only when it's cloudy, but also when the weather is clear, because it's got a good flight path to keep them in the proper areas. So we're glad to see that. And hopefully at some point that will be able to be shared with other airlines that can use it and be approved for it as well. But that also depends on what kind of equipment they have and whether or not they have the authorization to do this type of procedure, which is very special to the equipment, the pilots, and the airlines being approved for it.
You know, I'll add that I had an opportunity to have a brief conversation with staff at Atlantic, and I think they were in attendance last month, and are certainly more aware of the need to communicate to their customers on the inbound. So that was encouraging news.
And I have spoken with the people at Signature who have been very interested in the ability to get some information out to their people. Of course, one of the problems is when somebody's here, they've already landed. And the landing is typically the problem phase, but getting it back to the companies so that they understand that, you know, it's a privilege we want to keep available to them, and we want to be good neighbors. So,
And if you don't mind, I had an interesting conversation today with a staff member that's involved in our professional piloting community. Just shared that SkyWest Airlines, which operates a large majority of our United operations, they have 4,000 pilots from across the nation that they have to educate on these procedures. And just putting that in perspective, when you have a flight crew that may be based in New York, that every 4 months or however many per their union contract, they go out to bid on these new routes rather. That's 4,000 individuals that we need to touch. And that's one regional airline of many regional airlines. So for me, it just kind of reset the picture that this is a much bigger educational effort than perhaps we realize. So that's just one of the things I'd like to share.
Yeah. Also, the amount of times some individual pilot may fly into our city can be as high a frequency as once or twice a week, and it could be once or twice every 6 months, because Santa Barbara's a real desirable place to come, and a lot of people who are senior bid it first, so a lot of times they don't get to see it as often as they'd like, and consequently you get a lot of different people. So the notion that the guy who showed up here yesterday is the guy who shows up here today is very wrong. It's almost guaranteed to be somebody different. Any other comments?
Yes, Kelly Reed's commented about working with the commission, and given the number of complaints and the specific interest, I wondered if the commission would like to create a subcommittee specifically to address the noise issues. I think it would designate 3 primary people plus an alternate to specifically work with staff and air traffic control to address these issues. Hopefully not forever, because hopefully we can address them to the point that it no longer becomes a problem. But I think at this stage it would be very useful if the rest of the commission agrees.
Yeah, there were actually 2, I consider them administrative matters that I think I'd like us to consider, and that is one of them is reactivating the noise abatement subcommittee, which kind of just seemed to have ceased to have meetings several years back, I think, when there was some staff turnover. And I believe, due to all the interest in this topic right now, that we should have a standing agenda item on a monthly noise abatement report from the airport staff. So that the 2, and again, I think these are really just administrative items, and I don't even know if we need a motion on them, but it is a request, and maybe.
Well, reestablishing the noise abatement committees, because apparently they were disbanded for lack of anybody attending them, and there were no complaints at the time. So when there's nothing to talk about, there's obviously no reason to be meeting. But now there apparently is, so it sounds to me like it would be a good idea to reinstitute a noise abatement committee and have meetings as appropriate so that we can get the issues settled and dealt with. And
So may I suggest that that be added to, at our next meeting, where we'll be having our new commissioners, the January meeting is when we elect a chair and reestablish who's on each of the subcommittees, and if we can just add that subcommittee and we can decide on the next meeting, who's going to be on it.
So perhaps if you would like to set forth a motion directing staff to research what it would take to do this. I know we have a lot of city policies relative to different committees, task forces, things of that nature. Be happy to research that and come back with a full report.
Yeah, I'd say, curiously, I was on that committee, and I don't ever remember an actual action to disband the committee. It seems it just ceased.
Yeah.
well, you didn't meet because there was nothing to meet about, and there were
there
no
was just,
complaints.
lack
so
of an
they-
agenda, so there was not a meeting, so.
I think it's really reactivating an existing committee or subcommittee,
Mhm.
but I would certainly move that for staff to put that on next month's agenda as one of the subcommittees, and if there's some paperwork that has to be done, please do it.
I
I'll
would
second that motion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries.
And then again, I believe it would be appropriate to have a full, a standing agenda item on noise abatement. I know it kind of comes and goes in the director's report, but I think given the interest, that it would be appropriate to have that as a standing agenda item until such a time somebody thinks it.
I
I-
agree.
Okay,
I agree also. I think it'd be very important. It's where the interest lies, and we have a lot to do.
well, I think all of our committees have agenda items when they have met and have something to discuss, and so if the Noise Abatement Committee keeps meeting, they will have something to discuss, and it will be a natural item.
Even if we don't have a subcommittee meeting, I think rather than just having this report at the back of in the director's report, it should be a separate agendized item on the administrative agenda every time until further notice.
Yeah.
So it gets discussed and the numbers are presented so people know what is happening. Good, okay?
One last item for future, I'm not asking for it now. I mean, we see here, for instance, there's 71 from Hope Ranch, et cetera. We see the numbers. I'd like, to the extent that we can, to see the breakdown. Now, you mentioned, for instance, there were 11 from Alaska, and now there's 1. But it'd be, as I'd like to see who are the culprits. Is this spread across everybody, or is it one particular airline or one particular type of jet? For instance, are most of these corporate jets, are they, where is the problem to the degree to which it is reasonable and allowable to report publicly?
Well, I will say out of the 155 noise complaints that we received last month, we sent out 47 letters. So that means that 47 of the flights, all the flights are researched. 47 of the flights were found to be aircraft that did not fly a voluntary noise abatement procedure. So a large portion of those noise complaints were not founded. They were researched, and the aircraft they were flying the noise abatement procedure or very close to. Of that 47, it's pretty spread between the airlines typically. There's not one airline that's causing all of them. And it's pretty evenly spread between airlines and then different operators. It could be corporate traffic, it could be local corporate, a larger company like NetJets or ExactJets, and flight schools, local or aircraft operators at flight schools at other airports. So it's not one culprit. It's pretty evenly spread.
Thank you.
So I don't know if we need a motion for this, or if, the staff could just take this as direction to make this an agenda item. Is that?
Yeah, I think,
We feel comfortable making that an agenda item. If you wish to push it through as a motion, by all means.
Okay. Well, I'll make a motion that it become a standing agenda item.
I'll second your motion.
okay. Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we will have a standing agenda item. Now, do I understand we have some speaker slips regarding this issue?
That's accurate. Looks like the first speaker slip I have is from Douglas Scalapino.
And how many have you got total?
5 total.
Okay, 5, so we have, 2-minute time limit? Is that what we understand per speaker?
Correct.
Thank you, Lady Commissioner, commissioners, staff. My wife Diane and I have lived in Hope. My name is Doug Scalapino. My wife and I have lived in Hope Ranch since 1976. In recent years, and we live at 4637 Via Corretas. It's over us that we see the main path of people who are not pilots who are not dropping down going over the mesa. And it seems to us there's almost a beeline that comes over this part of the ranch, which I brought a picture along that I could show you if you would like. And what we've noticed is an increase in this traffic in recent years, but we're unable to identify that it's just commercial. It seems to us a great deal of the time that it's private flights coming directly over in line, I will admit, with the landing strip rather than having to move out. And so we've come, as other people from the ranch has come, to support the notion that if you could look into this, from our point of view, this would be very important and changes the style of living there, in the sense that it can be very noisy, particularly with some of the private planes that come in 2 o'clock in the morning, come in at midnight, and other times that seem to be the Gulfstream type and are extremely noisy and low, that didn't used to come in there. And I guess that was the other thing I could say. We've lived there long enough that what we've seen is a pattern of increase in this. And from at least my point of view, the increase seems rather dramatic. So that we simply encourage the kind of very nice reporting we heard regarding what is happening with the reports that come in about the noise and how one tries to identify them, and perhaps with pilots who don't know procedures or don't know how they could come in. We wish to encourage the Commission to continue with the notion of trying to educate and trying to pull the flight path so it doesn't come directly over the houses in the ranch.
Thank you.
I could leave this. It's a Google map with some dashed lines that try and indicate from our perspective what we see happening in our area of the ranch as they come directly over that, rather than where we also sit, we can see them when they sweep out over the mesa. Thank you.
Our next speaker slip is Greg Feet.
Commissioners and staff. My presentation is changing a little bit considering what you said, but I've reached out to a commercial pilot and he asked that I address you with a letter, and then I'll go from there after that, because I'm trying to just understand it a little better. So he has a bunch of salutations, and then he says, blah, blah, blah. Hence, the issue is largely runway 25 arrivals for Hope Ranch. I work for Hope Ranch. My name is Greg Feet. So he says, in the past, Santa Barbara radar approach control would have arrivals heading for this runway 25 come in over through Moore Mason, follow the runway 25 approach at an angle, in lay terms, from offshore diagonally across Moore Mason to turn on final approach about the first 1/3 of the way across Moore Mesa. Even the 747s that used to come into Tracor for interiors did this. Frequently, the American airline planes from Phoenix and Dallas fly ridiculously low over Hope Ranch. I don't know if approach control has just gotten complacent on the vectoring of flights for noise abatement procedures, or if they are handing off the planes to tower further out and the tower is not enforcing. Maybe you understand these terms. Santa Barbara Airport is Class C airspace with positive control and a radar environment for most hours of the day. The approach control personnel and or tower know exactly the path each plane flies, as everyone is on radar and most every plane's transponder is giving out altitude information. When the tower is closed, then Los Angeles Center handles the approaches and departures, and the pilots announce on the common traffic advisory frequency their landing or departure runways and intentions. This only applies to the wee hours and does not amount to much of the daily traffic. He concludes with, there is no logical or safety reason we are being subjected to the low approaches when the ocean or staying offshore in Moore Mesa, vacant land can be used as the approach path. And again, this is a commercial pilot that flies into Santa Barbara. So my question is, maybe we need to be educated, because I don't think that we understand, I don't understand, and the people that I talk to every day really don't understand what the problem is. Is it just, and is it not just? That's complicated, I understand. Is it an enforcement issue? Is it that the pilots just don't know or they don't care? You know, I deal with rules all the time, and a lot of times people just need to be reminded. I mean, it's educational. But I wonder if someone could write to me, and then I could put it out in our newsletter of just what exactly the problem is. I have a couple of questions that might be addressed in that to Kelly, especially. If you had a subcommittee, which sounds like you do now, would that be open to the public, or can people attend that? Subcommittee might be a good idea, but maybe it's just a bureaucracy. That is this just an enforcement issue? Sometime when you have a subcommittee, they just talk, and I mean, what is this issue, and does it need more talk, or does it just need action? I don't know. I'm not posing rhetorical questions. I really don't understand it. We would appreciate an explanation of what the actual problem is. People need to understand what the policy is visually.
like something, maybe you could send us, there was a good map or drawing that you had at the last meeting that really showed it. We would appreciate having that, because I think sometimes you get complaints that maybe aren't accurate. Probably when the jets start moving over to More Mesa, you're going to start getting complaints from, like my house is now, when I see them doing it right, it's actually bad for my house. So you might get complaints from my neighborhood when they're actually doing it right. But I'd like to understand it better so we can see, you know, maybe we can help. Maybe we can educate people. But also, we get a lot of questions, and if you could send it to me, if Kelly could, she has my email, we could post that and have a little better understanding.
Thank you.
Thanks for your help.
And yes, subcommittee meetings are open to the public and they are posted.
Adam or Aaron are next.
Next speaker, Laura Lee Mossbrugger.
Hi, I'm Lorelei Moosbrugger, but that's all right. And I live on Gwynn Avenue, so a different neighborhood. And I have never complained about the airplanes, and yet I wish I had, because I didn't realize that I might be 1 out of 11 or what have you.
Can you tell us where, in relation to the airport, north, south, east, west?
I'm across from Giordano's east.
Doesn't help me. Are
Okay.
you across the freeway on the mountainside of the freeway? Are
No.
you west of the airport? Are you east of the airport?
East of the airport.
Okay.
And so they do come in very low and loud. And it is oftentimes that I will look at my son or my husband and somebody will say, I can't believe that's legal. And I just learned from a neighbor that there really isn't the monitoring that we thought that there was. So we're not sure either, like Greg, whether or not it's about enforcement, whether you know how low these planes are coming in, whether or not that is legal. We don't know. And so I would like to echo his request that we get information in English with maps to know where these planes are supposed to be, how low they are supposed to be, what our expectations should be. I didn't realize, of course, that there was any change. I can't tell you whether or not I've noticed a change from November 26th, but sometimes they are so low and so loud, it's really jarring, it's really rattling. And so I just don't know. I don't know what this voluntary noise abatement procedure is, and whether or not it's a burden, the burden falls on the neighbors to let you know, to complain to you, or whether or not you do in fact review how the altitude and the noise levels. So I would just like to echo that the neighbors be brought in, or at least the leadership of different neighborhood groups. We've got a neighborhood block meeting on the first of the year, every year, January 1st, and we're going to be talking about this. I'm sure we can organize a few people who can make these subcommittee meetings and talk to you, but I really don't understand what is going on. I would like to understand what is going on, and when you speak to one another, it's very technical. It's not really English for us out here. And
Thank you very much.
So, it's just that we don't really, I don't think it's reasonable to expect us to understand what it is that you're saying. So it would be nice if we could go to a committee meeting where we would have more time.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Francisco Chacon.
Good evening, Madam Chairperson and Airport Commissioners, Airport staff. My name is Francisco Chacon. I live at San Vicente and Gwynn. And I'm here to talk about how we can do something possibly that other places are doing already. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are noise abatement procedures that are out there. I mean, John Wayne Airport, Orange County, has some great noise abatement procedures. They have sanctions, fines. They'll ban people from the airport if they don't meet their noise abatement or levels. They have actually have aircraft that are not allowed to land at their airport. A BAC 111, a jet commander, a Paris jet, A west wind 1123. And they're probably not landing there, so they're coming over here and making the noise here. I don't know, because I can't identify these aircraft. They have 10 microphones strategically placed around their community, which is similar in population on either side, and probably property values also. And they monitor these things. They monitor what the noise levels are at certain distances and at certain times. They change during the time of day. They have daytime hours, nighttime hours. They have a morning cutoff and a nighttime cutoff. If you're not there by a certain time, you can't land there. If you do land, you get fined. Okay. They have the same thing with coming in, at night. If you come in too late, maybe they're gonna, hold you at some of the airports that are coming to John Wayne. Sanctions, because we should not have a voluntary noise abatement program. All the voluntary is voluntary for those people to the airline companies and jet manufacturers. It's voluntary for them to make the noise to come in and pollute our environment. Okay, it's not. They're not doing anything, and and why should they? There's no sanctions. They don't have to. They don't care. They'll get a letter. It'll go in the round file.
Okay, we're going to ask you to wrap it up.
I'll wrap it up.
Thank you.
So with that, I think that we should be good neighbors to everybody around this area. There's a lot of people that are complaining. There's people on social websites. I've counted up to 300 comments on this since July of the noise and the frequency and the low flyovers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pardon me. Next speaker is Mary Lou Running.
Good evening. Thank you to the commissioners and staff. I sort of bring a different perspective to this. I was a flight attendant for 12 years and used to fly into Santa Barbara. And I won't tell you what kind of aircraft I was on because it was so long ago that I flew. But my husband and I live in Hope Ranch on a knoll on Tranquilla. And we've been there 11 years this month. The last 3 or 4 years, I am so horrified by what I see above our house every Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock. It's a private corporate giant white jet that literally you have to go inside. I often notice tipping the wings. So I don't know if that's a direct hello, here we are, I'm home, or whatever it is. It's the same time, and I swear I'm going to get in my car, drive over to the jet center and say, which plane is that? It's just so disruptive to our way of life. And I have seen more and more noise issues in the last, let's say, 3 years, I think. Having flown for all this time, I know that pilots also have options. I know that they're paid block to block. I know that if they're late or they're delayed, they have options. I know if they want to make up time. I know if they want to cut time. I know if they want to spend more time in Santa Barbara. I lived it, and I used to fly in here. I was a flight attendant for United Airlines in the good years, I'll tell you that, long, long time ago. But I would just hope that, I think I was going to support Greg's request for some more information. I think that people who haven't worked for an airline don't understand how all of this works. And I think if we all had more information, this would really, really help everybody. And I know you all are working on it. It sounds terrific, but I thought I'd better bring that perspective to you. And I don't know what that white jet is doing, but I think that a private pilots, corporate pilots, they have to abide by everybody else's rules too. And I think that should be enforced. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, what was that? Is it literally I think you
Oh
said
yeah, it's every Sunday afternoon.
at 3 o'clock?
Between 3 and 4:30 or so.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And that wraps up our speaker slips.
Okay, and that brings us to the director's report.
Okay. Again, thank you for all the comment tonight. We appreciate it. Just some real quick stats we'd like to cover regarding air service. For the month of November, we did see a year-over-year increase, a 10.3% increase in total passenger counts, which has been the most passengers on record since November of 2008. Also wanted to speak a little bit about the air service changes that we're experiencing. Sun Country, as we all know, established service back last fall, and it was seasonal service through December 9th. That service has unfortunately ended, but we did know going into this that it was a seasonal service. They have announced that they will be returning back to Santa Barbara, so we're very pleased with that as of May 23rd. And the frequency will go to 4 times weekly. So we're very pleased to see Sun Country come back to the market. And then just a quick update on some ongoing projects at the Northeast Apron. Some tremendous news with regard to the power. We will have lines pulled, we're being told, on Thursday night. That will then allow us to start the process of activating the commercial power, which will require just a little bit more time for staff. So right now at this point we're forecasting as of January 1st we will have full commercial service power to the building, and we'll be able to remove the generators from the facility. So that's a remarkable and long journey that we've come on, but we're very pleased to be able to have power back to that facility. And I know our tenants over there are as well. And then the last and final item I'd like to present is just a quick update on the Northeast Apron reconstruction. Originally, we were forecasting a completion date of December 14th. Of course, all of that at the time was without any environmental factors, as you know. And fortunately, we have received some light rain over the last couple weeks, which is pushing back the date just a little bit further than we anticipated, but still by the end of next week is what we're looking at on a completion date there. So very promising. We're happy to be wrapping that project up. And with that, I'll turn it over if there are any questions.
Questions?
6100 Hollister, is that all progressing on schedule then?
Still on schedule. And then again, so February 1, we could turn it over for tenant improvements, and then have them ready to go come May. Thank you, Deanna.
Quick question, what percentage of the new buildings do we have left to lease, and the one that's got now a tenant has how much left in the remaining building?
All right, happy to answer that question, Commissioner. We have a total of 5 buildings, and there's a total of 10 distinct units. So we have leased 1 this evening. We have 2 other very solid prospects that we think are likely to come back to the Commission for consideration in January or February. So that still leaves us, if we take the food and beverage and the retail out, so that's 2. The rest of them, of course, the remaining 8 are office, commercial, industrial. So we'll have at least 3 of those. So we'll have 5 left. So
good.
So we're making good progress considering sort of the time constraints that we have, and but it's gone well for us so far.
Good. Yep. Good work.
Well, I'll use this my final opportunity to ask about the solar project.
As I informed you last time, we're waiting for the city attorney to approve the changes to the draft PPA. We made some changes to that. We haven't got their approval yet, and we'll be moving forward with city council as soon as we do, and hopefully construction.
And staff should be advised that with Bruce's departure, I intend on asking that same question every meeting.
Welcome your question.
His legacy lives on.
Green power.
Along with that, if I read the agenda correctly, there's a proposal to increase our cost on a per kilowatt hour basis, but there was also a note about the eventual purchase 20 years out by the airport. Could you explain that?
That's correct. The original agreement, the agreement that's in place now, required the airport to either have the contractor remove the facility at the end of the year 20-year agreement at no cost to the airport, or the airport could buy the facility at the then fair market value, appraised value. So the new agreement, we pay slightly more, half a cent per kilowatt hour more for the power over the term of the agreement, but the facility comes back to us at no cost at the end of the agreement.
Okay, and I presume my only concern would be, and it may be worth exactly that in 20 years. That is zero.
We still have the option of having the contractor remove it at no cost if we want to do that.
Okay. But we're paying an increased monthly, or, you know, that half cent per kilowatt hour on the hopes that in 20 years it's still viable to us? Is that the idea?
That's correct. Also, since the project hasn't occurred yet, Edison Power has gone up, so that's made the economics look more favorable. Hard to explain, but the price of energy has gone up, and this has remained at the original price that we negotiated. So the half-cent increase is quickly overcome, assuming a 3% increase in Edison Power per year and a 5% discount rate over the term of the agreement. So it's positive net present value, more positive than it was in the original.
Okay. I just am concerned with what its value would be, but if we can have it removed at no cost in 20 years, then let's hope that we don't have to do that and that the extra half cent per kilowatt hour was worth it. And I'm not sure how many of us will be here in 20 years anyways.
Well, it would still be covered partly.
Could I add one more thing? Actually, the value may be in the structures that they'll build. If the technology is improved, we could put new panels on top of the canopy structures.
Okay.
And use those. So
That-
that may be a big value.
As the electrical engineer on the commission, that was the exact point I was going to bring up, is the structure is the value. The solar cells will have degraded enough, they'll need replacing, and all your other controlled and inverter logic will probably need replacing at that point. But the metal frames in place and the conduits with the wires in them are going to have some value for us.
Thank
And-
you.
And what does the extra half cent per kilowatt hour equate to, let's say, in monthly increase in charges that we pay?
It's approximately $150,000 over the 20 years, not discounted. So in real dollars, it's about $150,000.
Okay.
And then the last item, I'm having trouble finding it here, the Lee Fisher contract. I saw a note when I was reading the agenda online about going to the council for that. What was, could you?
Regarding the RFP with the FBOs?
I'll just provide kind of a high level, and if you want to look a little bit more technical, I'll have Deanna step in. But yeah, so the Lee Fisher contract went forward to council, which appropriated the entire appropriation over the term of the agreement. So that's the full plan from left to right, so to speak, and it allows us the flexibility to implement the specific sections of the work plan as we can accomplish them.
Great, thank you.
Great. Anything else from your report?
That concludes the director's report.
Well, I will say a special thank you to Bruce now, but I guess we get to say it again in January. So, thank you, and I will make the assumption that there's nothing else from you folks. We are adjourned.